This episode brought to you by MeepleRealty.com, your source for high-quality custom board game inserts. Meeple Realty, think inside the box.
Hey everybody, welcome to Board Online, Board Offline. Today we're bringing you the setup for the gameplay, the solo gameplay of Scythe. Now, we'll be using the Automa for this on normal difficulty, and I'll show you all that here in a second. Scythe is a really cool game about alternate history, Eastern Europe, in between World War I and World War II. But this is a World War I where mechs were used, and not those weird looking tanks that they had back in World War I for real, but actual, standing on two legs, or sometimes not standing on two legs, mechs rolling around, walking around, doing their thing. Let's get down to the board, and there's more to it than that. It's actually, combat is almost a backdrop. It's more about controlling your territory through the threat of combat almost as much as through combat itself. Whether or not the Ultima plays along with that is a whole different story. Let's get down to the board and I'll show you the setup for this game of Scythe. All right, so here's the board layout. Now, I am the blue up there in the north part of the map, and the Ultima is going to be the black player down here. My faction name is the Nordic Kingdoms, and down here we have the Saxony Empire. All right, now the character, it's not going to matter much for the Ultima player here, but you've got what's his name, Gunther Nachtentag, which in the I'll show you the picture for him in a minute, the artwork, and he actually has two wolves in the artwork, but only one here. So I think that's why it's Nachtentag. And then for me up there, I've got, here, let me grab him. Let's see here. It's kind of a buffalo looking thing, I guess. All right. My name is Bjorn, and I'm riding Mox there. Okay. And then you can see that each of us have two workers already placed out. That's how the game always starts, whether you're playing Ultima or not. For the Ultima's purposes, what these territories are don't really matter. They don't produce resources. It's just for the purposes of gaining points. Controlling territories gains them points at the end of the game. So that's the only thing that really matters as far as territories go for the Ultima. For me, I'm starting in a tundra, I believe, is the area that produces the oil, which is this worker here. And then the other worker is in a forest producing wood. Let's see, what else? Up here on the top of the board, we have our Triumph track, and that's where different stars will go based on, what different objectives I complete. And you can see here, the first one here is for me completely upgrading my faction. Then you've got deploying all four of my mechs, building all four buildings, enlisting all four different recruits, having 8 workers, completing one objective, one each for 2 different fights that I can win in order to gain stars. The next one there is getting to 18 on the popularity track, and the last one is getting to 16 on the power track. Over on the top right of the board there, the yellow deck are combat cards. Down here we have upgrade cards, which I can get from the factory. There's 3 there. You always have the number of players plus 1, or in the case of an Ultima, you're setting it up as if it's a 2-player game. But that's why we have 3 cards there. Those are chosen at random. I don't know what's there. We'll figure that out if we manage to make it to the factory right here in the center of the board. Down here is an objective deck, which we won't be messing with at this point, I don't believe, unless some effect lets us gain an objective, but I haven't run into that yet. Over here, this was chosen at random. There's a bunch of different ones of these. This is to give me additional money for money, which also money is points as well, but for my buildings. So if I build buildings on on the farmland or on the tundra, I'll get points. If I build 1 building, I'll get 2 buildings, 4, 3 will get me 6, and 4 will get me 9 at the end of the game. This is the encounter deck, which we will run through this whenever my character, and only my character, not my workers, not my mechs, my character goes onto a space with one of these tokens, then we'll have an encounter of some kind. The Automa's popularity is always at 10, so you can see that means that at the end of the game, the Automa, for every star the Automa has, the Automa will get 4 coins. For every territory, it controls 3 coins, and for every resource, every 2 resources that it has, 2 coins. Currently, my popularity is 4. That's where mine starts, but hopefully I can get farther up the board there. All right, so like I said, here's my player board here for the Nordic Kingdoms. Here are my 6 stars. The game ends as soon as a 6th star is placed out, whether it's by me or by the Automa. These are some bonuses I can get for using the enlistment action, and we'll talk about that kind of as it happens. These are my 4 mechs I can put out on the board. I start with 7 coins. We'll talk about the powers underneath the mechs here in just a second. I have a built-in ability for the Nordic Kingdoms. My workers can move across rivers. They have the swim ability. You can see I start at 4 power. Oh, I forgot to show you the power track, but I have 4 power, and the Saxony Empire starts at 1. All right, so I also get 1 combat card. Now I got lucky and managed to get a 4. There's actually only 8 4s in the entire deck. There's 6 5s, and then 12 3s and 16 2s. So obviously those are a lot easier or more likely that you'll get. Now the 2 objectives that I could possibly, you can only complete 1 objective per game, but you get 2 options, or at least this particular faction or player board here shows you that you get 2. So here, become a beloved pacifist, all right? Have 0 power, at least 13 popularity, and at least 5 workers. Now, this one I think might be pretty difficult to successfully get because the Automa generally is going to move quickly across the board and is going to start encroaching on my areas pretty quickly. So that might be a little difficult. I'm probably going to need to be able to be a little more combat reliant than maybe you would in a normal player versus player game. But that gives me this ability, or this objective, therefore could be a little bit easier to achieve is what I'm trying to say. Achieve tactical mastery, have 8 or more combat cards in hand, and at least 1 combat victory star. So probably that's the one I'm going to try to focus on grabbing if I even worry about objectives, because it's not the only way to get stars, obviously. But we'll see. Those are the 2 that I currently have available. Down here, as we kind of go along, as I'm using these different options, these different actions, I will kind of talk about them as they happen. But let's talk about the different abilities I can unlock by building mechs. The Nordic Kingdom's Riverwalk ability lets me move across a river with my mechs or my, character to a wooded area or to a mountain area, which is where you get, obviously the wooded area gives you the wood and the mountain area gives you metal. All right, so that's pretty standard as far as everybody has some form of Riverwalk. Now, Seaworthy. Seaworthy actually lets me use the lakes, which have this symbol right here, as a territory. Both my character and my mechs can move to and from lakes, but I can also retreat onto them, which means that if I get defeated in battle, I don't necessarily have to retreat back to my home base. If I'm next to a lake, I can retreat to it instead. All right, so now here's artillery. So before combat, if I pay 1 power, I can actually subtract 2 power from the opponent in that round of combat. And to be clear, that's actually going to be reflected on the power track immediately, as opposed to subtracting 2 from them in combat itself. All right, so now with speed, this was pretty straightforward, +1 hex per movement. So each of my units, which normally can only move 1 hex at a time, they'll be able to move 2 if I unlock that one. All right, so over here with the Automa, he's currently got 4 combat cards, which is what he starts with, and we're using the normal difficulty. Now, I actually just right before I began filming this, played a round of this just to make sure I got the rules down pretty well. And I played with the exact same setup. These were different, you know, all that stuff. But as far as the faction and my player mat, exactly the same. And I lost by 2 points, 2 coins at the end of the game. So I wanted to give another shot. I have not beaten the normal difficulty yet. I beat the easy difficulty fairly handily, fairly easily, but I wanted to give it a shot again on normal. I'm not going to obviously move up to the next difficulty level until I've beaten this one. And we'll see how it goes this time. Hopefully I can get it because, like I said, it was so close. It was so close last time. All right, so real quick, let's take a look at this card. So as this moves along, and I'll show you with the Automa cards how they work once we get into the game. But basically this black cube will be moving along this card. As long as we have this cross through the water symbol, so these first 4, the Automa will not be able to cross any of the water. But once we get down here, then it'll cross the water pretty easily. So once we hit this star right here, that's going to be the first time the Automa gets a star. It also is going to mean that when we're drawing from the Automa deck, and you can see here's Automa deck, you have a 1 up here, a 2 down here. So at the beginning of the game, the Automa is going to be using the green side of this card, all right? And so, you know, as we play, I'll explain these different symbols and everything. But once it hits the 2 right there, then the whole deck will get reshuffled, and then instead we'll be drawing them like this, and we'll be using the orange side, which is generally a little more difficult to deal with, a little more aggressive, that sort of thing. But I'll explain all that. I think it'll be easier just to kind of show you how the Automa deck works as we play, instead of trying to explain what all those different symbols mean beforehand. All right, so this game is set up and ready to go. We'll be coming right back in just a few days, hopefully, with the gameplay of this solo, normal difficulty, Scythe Automa game. Now, I really hope, I'm pretty positive I can get the whole gameplay into one video. If it goes too much over an hour, obviously I like to chop them up, but I did manage to get First Martians in one video, so I think Scythe shouldn't be much of a problem. So come back next time for our second part and hopefully finale of our Scythe solo gameplay. And until next time, if you're bored online, board offline.